Now, how the male gametes reach to the female gametes in the plant, right? So there was a different part all over different part, right? If you can just little go back, like the pollen sacs, right? Right there in the stamen, that is the male part, and the female part was pistil. So, but how is this happening? How are these male gametes reaching to the female gametes in plant? What exactly is happening around that the process is moving, and who exactly is picking or dropping it, and what exactly is happening behind the scene? What exactly is happening behind the scene? So the male and the female gametes fuses and form a zygote. The male gametes reach the female gametes by the process of pollination. Okay, so if you read the first sentence again, it says the male and the female gametes fuses and form a zygote. And when does it happen? When the pollen, like when the pollen thing is like being transferred to the female part from the stigma to the pistil, it is transferring from one place to the another, goes through the style, and then to the ovule, and then they fuse together, both the eggs fuse together, they form a zygote. Now, how exactly is this happening? The process is known as pollination. The transfer of male gametes reaching to the female gametes by the process of pollination. I hope this new term is clear, the pollination, where the male part or the male ovule or the male thing is reaching to the female part is known as the process of pollination. The pollen grains have a tough covering which allows them in surviving the different climatic conditions, right? So of course that is happening because like if a male plant is little far away, then what about the pollens, right? They have to fly, or they need to they come with the water or something. So they need to have a little hard covering around them. Otherwise, they in the process of reaching to a female gamete, they can die in between. For that, they have a tough covering which allows them in surviving the different climatic conditions. Okay. Now, due to their lightweight, wind and water often carry them away to different parts, different plants, right? Sometimes the pollen grains also get attached to insects, which carry them to different flowers. This process of transfer of pollen grains from one another to stigma is called pollination. I'm repeating myself here. The process of transfer of pollen grains from one anther to stigma is called pollination. Now, in pollination method, the pollen grains are picked from anther, that is the male part of the flower, and transferred to the stigma, female part of the flower. Right? The process is known as pollination. If you can see, there are the pollen grains are right here, over here, onto the male part of the flower. The pollen grains like leave the surface from there, maybe due to wind, maybe due to water, maybe due to insects taking them from one place to another. They leave their surface, they move, right? And then they reach up to the sticky part of the female reproductive part, that is the stigma. They reach over there, they stick to the stigma, then they reach to the ovary and then get connected to the ovule inside the ovary. I hope we are clear till here. Moving further, there are different types of pollination that are happening around us. There is self-pollination and there is cross-pollination happening. So we'll read about both of them here in little detail. So we'll talk about firstly self-pollination. What exactly self-pollination is? So as the name suggests, self-pollination is kind of a thing that is happening in the same flower itself. Okay, the pollen grains does not need to go to other part or maybe to other flower somewhere. No, it's happening right there into the same flower. Pollen grains are transferred from anther to the stigma of the same flower or the flowers on the same plant. Okay, they're happening inside the same plant itself. They're not moving away from their own plant right where they are. Okay, so that is the self pollination. Moving further is your cross-pollination. Cross-pollination, the pollen grains are transferred from one anther to stigma of the flower on the other plants which is of the same kind. Remember, of course, here cross pollination is happening, right? The grains are moving from one plant to the another, but the plant needs to be of the same kind. Okay, so from the anther to the stigma of the flower of to the other plant, but they have to be of the same kind, and this is of cross pollination. So right now we learned about two kinds of pollination. Firstly, self pollination, where the pollen grains from the anther, the male reproductive part, are going to the stigma of the female reproductive part, but the plant is same, the flower is same, or at least the plant, like suppose every plant, a flowering plant, have multiple flowers onto it, so it's going and transferring onto the same flower over there, right? And then into cross pollination, the anther is being like, the pollen grains from the anther are transferring to the stigma of the flower onto other plants, but the plants needs to be of the same kind.